اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him and we seek His help and His forgiveness. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil of our own selves and the consequences of our own bad deeds. Whoever God guides, none can lead astray, and whoever He leads astray, none can guide. I bear witness that there is no God but the one God, having no partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. O you who believe, be conscious of God as you should be conscious of Him, and die not except in a state of submission to Him. I want to talk about getting our religious affairs in order. When I first converted to Islam, I was doubting everything about the religion. I say this a lot of times. People ask, ask a new convert for their story or, what brought them to it. And for me, it was very messy at first, actually. Especially intellectually. When I started reading the Quran, I felt an attraction, I felt an attachment and understanding. But really, what convinced me of Islam was when someone showed me how to pray for the first time. Right? When I started the prayer and I started to actually feel the effect of the religion. Right? I felt this purity, this cleanliness. Right? This connection. And that's when I started to think, maybe this is the right religion. Maybe this is the real religion. Right? But after I had that connection, my mind was always at war with Islam. To be honest, I was always at war with Islam. I was always questioning the Quran, if it was really authentic, questioning the hadiths, questioning this ruling, questioning that ruling. And I was diving into controversial material, difficult material. I was reading these anti-Muslim sites. I was reading books of Islamic law that I just simply wasn't equipped to handle. I was reading hadith that I just simply was not equipped to understand. Right? My foundations were very rocky. And it was like this for some time. At least a year, maybe 2 years. But the thing that would keep recentering me, right, when my mind would start to be convinced, maybe I don't know about this religion. Maybe it is like how these people say. Right, is I would practice it. Right, I would do the prayers. Right, I would do the dhikr. I would do these basic obligations. Right, these basic recommendations, these basic tools of spiritual nourishment that's prescribed for us. Right, I would do those, and then my heart would start to experience something. My heart would start to understand something that my mind couldn't understand yet. Right, so why am I talking about this? Actually, this whole thing, this isn't really the topic of my khutbah today. Right, what I want to talk about is zakat. Right, I want to talk about these fundamental pillars of Islam. Right, these fundamental pillars of spiritual nourishment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us. Right, and how people have a tendency, myself included, we have a tendency to, when we're struggling with the religion, when we're not feeling like we're getting what we want from the religion, to prioritize understanding these things in our mind. To prioritize maybe looking at materials that we have no training to look at. Right? To prioritize reading these counter arguments against our religion instead of actually studying our religion. Right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what we should prioritize, He tells us where we should go to really start to understand the nature of the religion. Right? And to understand the religion, the nature of the religion in a way that is beyond words. Right? It's beyond the way that our mind can just understand it. Right? It's through the prayer. It's through the wudu. It's through fasting Ramadan. And it's through paying the zakat. Right? Through doing these basic pillars, right, that establish us in the reality, right? The actual lived and experiential reality of this religion, as opposed to just the arguments, right? The frameworks. People always ask me, right? When they're asking you about your conversion, they seem to be asking you of like, what argument did you get? Right? What argument did you read? What line in the Quran did you read? Right? To where your understanding of other things was defeated. Right? They seem to think that conversion to Islam, right, that it comes through the mind. Right? Or that us being stronger in our faith, that it comes through our mind. No, it comes through the experience. Right? It comes through seeing something in people who are worshiping, who are performing these actions. Right? Seeing something different in their heart. Even if you're very not impressed by how they describe their religion to you intellectually. Right? It's about, for ourselves, right, establishing ourselves in this reality. Right? Not just intellectually, but practically. Feeling a relief from the difficulty of this world. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us why He sent this Quran, who He sent it for. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. هدى والبشرى للمؤمنين الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم بالآخرة هم يوقنون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He sent us this Quran, He gave us this religion as a guidance and good tidings for the believers. Right? When He mentions the believers, He mentions specifically those who establish the prayer and who give the zakat, and of the hereafter, they're certain. Now this is very interesting. We see these phrases talking about those who believe and those who establish the prayer and those who do the zakat. And the ordering of how this is lifted is deliberate. Everything in this book that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is deliberate. So we have to be conscious of that. We see that sometimes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these obligations, right, He mentions first our belief. Right? He says that we believe and then we establish the prayer and then we establish the zakat. Right? But now, here He's saying something very interesting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us something very interesting. That if we want certainty in the hereafter, who are the people who actually have certainty in the hereafter? Who are actually convinced of this religion? Right? Beyond their mind, but in their hearts, they know it to be true. It's those who establish the prayer and they give the zakat. They follow the obligations of this religion. Now, why am I emphasizing the zakat right here? Because often, I feel like the zakat is not emphasized enough. Especially in terms of us considering our own spiritual lives. Right? We don't think of zakat as necessarily a spiritual practice. Right? And we think now that because it can be difficult, right? When we read some hadith or we read some rulings about the zakat and we see it talking about animals and silver and gold and these things that seem a little out of touch to us, right? And then we're looking at the financial situation that we're in today, right? How difficult it is to understand, right? We have all this credit and these debts and these all of these different systems. That a lot of people, I think, just assume that they probably don't qualify to pay it. Right? Because things are so complicated and so many people have debt from this or that or a mortgage or something like that they think, I probably just don't qualify to pay it. And this right here, this is not a fiqh class. Right? I'm not going to explain who is qualified to pay it and who's not qualified to pay it and what you do with the debt, what you do if you have student loans or all these kind of things. Right, but this is a reminder, is that if you are in a complicated financial situation, right, student loans, a mortgage, right, I'm mentioning a mortgage, and when I'm mentioning a mortgage, I'm not giving a fatwa on a mortgage. I'm not saying that a mortgage is permissible or not permissible. I'm not at all qualified to talk about that. What I'm saying is that if you have one, and you're trying to calculate your zakat, for these things that made your financial situation so difficult, right? How much time did you put into researching those? Right? Researching this loan, applying for this loan. Right? Researching this school. Right? Applying for grants for the school, applying for scholarships. Right? How much time did you put into understanding these financial situations? And how much time are you putting in to understanding the zakat? And it's complicated, but it's not that complicated. There's people who can help simplify it for you. There's applications on websites that you can just plug in your assets, and it'll give you a pretty reliable estimation. And so what I'm trying to say is that there is a relationship, right, between us feeling uncertain in religion. There is a relationship to us being unstable in our religious practice, being unstable in our understanding, and being unstable in our basic understanding and application of the fundamental pillars of Islam. Right? And again, we think that zakat isn't a spiritual practice. Right? We think that it's just a financial thing. Right? But the reality is, I also want to emphasize that the zakat, it is a charity, and it's an obligatory charity, but we should think about it more like it's a tax. Right? Why should we think about it like a tax? Because people understand taxes. They understand that you can't just not pay your taxes. Right? What happens if you don't pay your taxes? You're a criminal. Right? Or you're a billionaire, but we're not going to talk about that. Right? The people who aren't paying their taxes in this system, right, they actually have a big benefit. They can manipulate the system. They can hide from the people who they have to pay their taxes to. We can't. We have to be very mindful of who levied this tax on us. And we have to be mindful of that if we're not paying it, we're not doing the effort to understand it and to pay it appropriately, that we're criminal. And there is a spiritual benefit to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. He tells us, keep up the prayer, and not just keep up the prayer, and bring the zakat, and obey the messenger, then possibly, inshallah, you'll be granted mercy. Right, so what's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying here? He's saying that if we're having these spiritual difficulties, that if we get our affairs in order, we get our basic affairs in order, then maybe we're going to find some relief in it. And actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us something with even more certainty, even more assurance than that. قَالَ أَذَابِ أَصَيْبُ بِهِ مَنْ أَشَاءُ وَرَحْمَتِهِ وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ وَيَأْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِآيَاتِنَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, my torment, I afflict it with whoever I decide. And my mercy has embraced all things. And so soon I will prescribe it, my mercy, to the ones who are pious and bring the zakat. Right? Immediately qualifying the pious with those who bring the zakat. And the ones who believe in our signs. And we know that when we're doing righteous actions, we know that when we're making dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we're fulfilling our obligations, right, when we're walking to the masjid, when our lives are revolving around the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is blessing us in ways that we're not aware of. Right? That the angels are returning our du'as that we make for other people. Right? That when we're mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning us. Right? But sometimes we forget, right, that when we're leaving these major obligations, right, that the Prophet ﷺ said, every day 2 angels come down from heaven, and one of them says, oh Allah, compensate every person who spends in your cause. Reward every person who spends in your cause. And the other angel says, oh God, destroy every miser. Destroy every miser. Right? So if you've been in a period, right, where you're trying to keep up with other things, but your zakat, you've completely thrown in the trash, you've completely forgotten about, then you're having some supplications against you that might be affecting your spiritual life. أقول هذا واستغفر الله ولي ولكم.